Welcome to the Aconic Podcast with me, Soon Yu, your host. The Aconic Podcast features candid conversations with successful Asian and AAPI leaders who share their personal journeys of challenges and triumphs. The Aconic Podcast is brought to you by the Asian American Foundation, by Gold House, and by the founders of the Asian Alumni Chapter of the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and is made possible through the generous support of Stanford Federal Credit Union and Altos Ventures.
And then my junior year, my mom called me. It was actually like, hey, you might have to come home and take a year off from school. We can't figure it out. Like, there's no more loans anywhere that we can take. I was just trying to save everywhere I could. And even as I was preparing for the NBA draft, I was saving. And so I wasn't eating until I was full. Every day, it was just the same thing. I just ate $5 footlong from Subway, and I would have 2 footlong, $10.25 once you count tax. And that was my meals every day. It was just 2 footlong for lunch, 2 footlong for dinner. And that to me, how many calories I was burning, like that wasn't enough food for me to even be full.
Welcome to the Aconic Podcast. We're very excited. Many firsts here. I think it's the first time we've actually done an episode recording live with a live audience. Couple things. I don't need to do much of an introduction for Jeremy, but maybe some of the things you may not know. Jeremy is the visionary founder for Lin LLC, which is a impact-driven, mission-driven organization that really is focused on giving opportunities, breaking down barriers, and really instilling hope for youth in marginalized communities, including the AAPI community. And so, I mean, that is an amazing thing. And one thing you probably don't know about this corporation, this LLC, is that it is the main force behind the Jeremy Lin Foundation, which was founded before the whole Linsanity episode. So, Jeremy, you were thinking service really early on, and I think that's a big testament. 2 more things I wanted to share. I was talking to my wife about this. The 2 weeks of Linsanity, obviously a big part of your life, big part of your story. But it's also a big part of my life and part of my story. I was telling my wife there were very few 2 weeks in my life that I remember vividly being glued to the TV, checking out what the Knicks schedule was, turning from a Warriors fan to a Knicks fan overnight. I think the only other 2 weeks that rival that in my life arc and history, maybe my honeymoon. And the honeymoon was better, honey. It was, okay. But close. Okay, it was very close. Also, I just want to say the last week I've had a chance to kind of do some research on Jeremy, and I've been able to obviously relive the previous 2 weeks, but I've been able to share it with my family. We've had 2 movie nights. One was for the Emmy-winning 38 at the Garden, and so I sat with my son and wife. We watched that, and then we watched Linsanity. By the way, quick call out to Dave Liu and to Patricia Sun, Emmy award-winning producers, okay, of 38 at the Garden. They're here, and Patricia is the CEO of Lin LLC. So we'll get more into that in a second. So let me just jump right to it. Jeremy, we know a lot about Linsanity, but I think the idea of Linsanity was started way early in terms of some of the things, the motivations, the way you went about it. That all started off early in childhood. And I love one of your podcasts, specifically the one with Shirley Lin, which is your mom. Okay, that's probably my favorite one. I've actually listened to it twice, and I made my son and wife listen to it on the drive here from Davis. So they listened to today too. So I listened to it twice. But she talks about, or you talk about, the idea of being the middle kid and how that actually impacted who you became, your drive, your independence, your adaptability, but also being a pain in the ass. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, being a middle child it's tough, but it's also a lot of fun. And I think the best part of it is I got to see both sides. I was an older brother and a younger brother, but definitely gave me a chip on my shoulder being, Asian American. playing basketball also gave me a different level of chip on the shoulder as well. And so I would just had a lot of chips on my shoulder, and I was just extremely aggressive, always trying to disrupt. The more somebody said I couldn't do something, that made me want to do it even more. And that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. And my mom, my mom didn't tell me this at the time. She told me after. She was just like, "Hey, you know why I was so hard on you is because you reminded me of a younger version of myself." And she had regrets about wasting some of the talents that she had and how she went about things. And so, again, from a young age, it was ingrained, whether through kind of just the upbringing or even through my parents of, you're gonna get after it, and you're not gonna leave any stone unturned, essentially.
Yeah, and I think there is this ability to face conflict and not run away from it, which is not an Asian trait. Normally, when we see conflict, we kind of try to appease it or make it go away. Apparently, you and your mom had no problem with conflict. Is that right?
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to the genes, I guess, because I don't know, there's no explanation. I mean, there's a popular, in conflict, you're either a rhino or you're a hedgehog. Rhino charging forward into conflict, hedgehog is, you hide and you avoid it. And, we had 5 members in our family. We had 3 hedgehogs, 2 rhinos, and me and my mom were the rhinos. And there was a lot of charging at each other. And it's hilarious because my older brother, has said this many times through the years. He basically said, "My sense of home, like that nostalgia of home, is waking up to Jeremy and mom fighting."
That's great. And I think this is really important because one of your key characteristics in terms of your attitude when you play basketball is when you're at your best, you're competitive and you have no problem charging into a sort of a forest of tall trees and somehow making a layup and all of that. And that sort of charging attitude probably was sort of driven by that chip on the shoulder. I think a couple other themes I was listening to your mom's podcast. One of them was this idea of service and caring for others was a value that was important to your parents and maybe at first begrudgingly but eventually adopted by yourself. Can you talk about the circumstances and instances of taking care of your teammates or sort of a new kid on the block, how your mom actually made you appreciate that value?
Yeah, and even before I get to that, I actually just want to touch a little bit more on just the charging. Is actually it was modeled by my mom. A lot of time, like growing up, my mom did a lot of things different, thought outside the box, and she had such an ability to charge forward and put on blinders in a good way, even to the point where when her friends, when her family, when they would critique her or criticize her or even have little interventions of like, "You're wasting your money, your kids are playing basketball, like you're traveling every weekend, like you're wasting money." Every family reunion, my grandmother would be like, "Hey, good to see you. It's been a year. Are you still playing basketball?" "Yeah." "Can you quit and become a doctor?" "Oh, okay." But in all those moments, my mom, even to the people that like, even some of her best friends, she would kind of say to us as a family, there's like, "Don't listen to them. They don't know us like we know us, or they don't know what's best for you." And when you talk about like seeing that at such a level of like, hey, we as a family have made this decision. We're going to charge forward. We're going to go for it, and we'll be relentless about it. We'll be unapologetic about it. Like my mom is one of the most unapologetic people. I mean, she's gone into meetings with the NBA, with the commissioner, and just been like, boom. And I'm like, "Mom, okay, I get it. We're charging, but like, let's scale back on the charge right now." Like she is relentless, and she is, and she's honestly like, she's why I have that mentality. It was modeled for me, and she's an amazing, amazing, such a strong woman. On the flip side, that's one aspect of it. Now you're talking about service. Yeah, again, my mom, very philanthropic to this day. She's been retired for many years now, but she is doing, she's providing free aftercare tutoring to a lot of rural kids who don't have great education, who can't even pass their most basic tests. And she's driving out, making day trips, like 3 hours into the mountains, doing it, and 3 hours back, to the point where her back is all messed. Like that's the type of woman my mom is, and she's doing that to this day. And she's been able to kind of replicate that into different sites. And so now there's multiple sites, and, just her totally being able to, I mean, she deserves and has earned the right to chill, but is still thinking about other people. And again, I grew up in Palo Alto, but across the street, East Palo Alto, when I was growing up, we had the highest crime per capita of any city in the US. And I had a lot of teammates who grew up in East Palo Alto, and my mom was always like, hey, let's go pick him up, let's give him a ride, take him out to eat, whatever it was. And through that interaction and that experience, realizing like, oh, sometimes my teammates wouldn't sleep well because there was a gunfight on their street, and they're literally 5 minutes away from me, like right across 101. And that's when, my mom was always like, hey, you have to appreciate what you have and realize not everybody has what you have. How can you open your eyes and your perspective wider to be able to see a little bit more? And so, service, definitely service oriented to a fault. Anytime someone come in, oh, my kid, one of her friends comes in, oh, my kid loves sports. Oh, volunteer me. Like, oh, my son loves basketball. He's going to take your son to go play basketball. And then and now I'm showing up at the park with someone who has never played basketball before. And all my teammates and friends are like, why are you bringing these people to come play with us? And I'm like, I don't have a choice. My mom told me to. That's how service oriented she was. If there was a need, she was going to step in and do what she could to help.
That's amazing. I'm excited to announce that we have a new partner, the Stanford Federal Credit Union. On the show, we talk about the hero's journey, and for nearly a decade, I have trusted the Stanford Federal Credit Union on my journey because they're not like a regular bank. They're a nonprofit that puts their members first by giving back all their profits in the form of cash rewards, amazing rates, and waived fees. To celebrate our partnership, they are offering up to a $620 bonus just for joining. And they are also offering credit cards that earn up to 5% cash back with no annual fees. So please visit sfcu.org/aconic to learn more.
I packed up my locker. I put everything in a trash bag, all my shoes and my practice jersey, whatever. I left. That nobody knew. I left in the morning, right after our morning practice. I go back to the hotel. My parents are there. And I call my agent. I say, hey, I'm done. Tell the Rockets to cut me. This is a waste of my time.
And another story about your mom that talks about the idea of sacrifice and dedication, which obviously is a big part of who you are and how you've been successful in your career, is this idea that you guys barely paid for Harvard. I mean, you were taking out all these loans, and I think she was worried about you wouldn't get enough food to eat. And there was this choice, a decision, a fork in the road to say, am I really going to pursue this professionally? And if I am, I'm probably going to need some support. Can you talk about that decision and what happened and how your parents supported you on this?
I feel like if you talk to anybody who had any major breakthrough, before that breakthrough comes at least one moment where it's like that breaking point. Like you either give up or you double down. And I mean, every time I hear somebody's like, oh, this person did this and anything amazing, there's always at least one of those breaking points where it's like, you're gonna really look in the mirror and figure out, like, am I about this or am I not? And that for me was my mother, like that story that you're referencing. My mom had to make a decision. I think, we actually couldn't even make it through college, like 4 years of tuition. There was no athletic scholarship. My mom and dad had mortgaged the house until we couldn't get anything else. I got every last bit of financial aid and it still wasn't enough. And then my junior year, my mom called me. It was actually like, hey, you might have to come home and take a year off from school. We can't figure it out. Like there's no more loans anywhere that we can take. Luckily, somebody else stepped in and paid that year's tuition. I paid them back later, but it wasn't a loan from somebody that my mom wanted to take. It was literally back against the wall. And so that's the financial pressure that my parents were up against. Then I graduated with a Harvard degree. And I'm like, I like playing basketball. And my mom's like, all right, well, go. And I was cognizant, right? Like in college, I didn't never bought textbooks because I couldn't afford it. If it was a friend's birthday party, I tried to avoid it because they're going to a restaurant and you're going to pay $20 for a meal. Or there's times when my friends, teammates would go into downtown Boston. And I would say no thanks, just because of T ride. I was just trying to save everywhere I could. And even as I was preparing for the NBA draft, I was saving, and so I wasn't eating until I was full. Every day it was just the same thing. I just ate $5 footlong from Subway, and I would have 2 foot long, 10.25 once you count tax, and that was my meals every day. It was just 2 foot long for lunch, 2 foot long for dinner, and that to me, at that, how many calories I was burning, like that wasn't enough food for me to even be full. And then my mom basically lied. Well, she didn't lie to me. Yeah, she didn't lie to me,
She
but
withheld.
she withheld information. She said, "Hey, I know you haven't been eating until you're full. If you want to have any chance of making the NBA, you're really gonna have to, like, your body is, very important." And she's like, "I found some money. I'm giving you 2 years to chase your dream." And then she didn't tell me till 7, 8 years later that it was out of whatever she had left in her 401k. Kind of basically just emptied it all out for me and said, "Hey, you got 2 years." And then she made me promise, but if in 2 years you're still not doing it, go get a job. And I was like, "I got you. I'll definitely do that."
And you didn't find out until 7 years in your NBA career.
Which is another bit of character, right? Like, that's another aspect of character, right? Like, it's like easy once Linsanity happens, like, yo, you remember what I did for you? I did this for you. She was not trying to come back for any of it. She was not trying to ask me to pay her back or any of that stuff, or she was not trying to prove a point. Like, I asked her, I was like, "Hey, mom," like, it is literally 8 years later. Like, I'm with like the Hornets or the Nets or
Nets,
something,
probably, yeah.
Nets. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, where'd that money come from?" She's like, "Oh yeah, this is out of my 401k, whatever I left." I was like, "What?"
Pretty good investment, but yes, that's amazing.
The ROI was
I mean, that speaks to this idea of character, right? And I think when you think of NBA players that have character, you come first and foremost. And so you really represent our community incredibly well. And I know that's one of your goals is how you show up every day. And a lot of that is because how you were brought up. So I want to talk about another sort of chapter in your life, and it's this idea of being overlooked and underestimated, and the chip on the shoulder that was created by that. But let's start. I mean, you were kind of a phenom already in sixth grade. I read this one post that a teammate of yours talked about you in sixth grade and how you came into the team for just 1 year and they relied on you to win every game, basically.
I haven't even read that post.
Oh, I'll send it to you. It's great. They talked about how there was one game where they were playing and they were losing 16-10 by half, and you hadn't showed up. And then you sheepishly come into the game, and they're like, "Where the hell were you? We're losing." "I had violin lessons." Is that right? That's what he said.
He got it a little bit wrong. It was piano lessons,
Yeah, I thought I figured it out. He said violin, I figured it's piano.
because I was in the middle and my mom comes in and she's like, our teacher, her name was Miss Brick. She's like, "I'm sorry, Miss Brick, we gotta go." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You have a game right now." I was like, "I do?" She's like, "Sorry, I double booked. We gotta go." And so we literally got there, yeah.
And guess what? They won thanks to you, right? And you helped them come back. Good job. So you had a very storied high school career. You were, again, somebody that came in and I think you guys played the number 6 ranked team in the country from Southern California, and you were this small Pali High team. It was Matter Day, okay? And you upset them. It was David and Goliath. And you had this, I think you were NorCal Player of the Year, and yet you went unrecruited. No one was gonna give you a scholarship. Stanford, damn it, okay? No scholarship, okay? We need to start a new fund, okay, here. Anyway, um, and then let's talk about, I mean, your first 2 years in your NBA, actually, you were undrafted. Then you had to spend a summer in, I think is the D League or the Summer League, actually, Summer League with the Dallas Mavericks. They didn't sign you, actually. It ended up being, Golden State that signed it, and then you were back and forth between, I guess, the bench and the D League for a good year, and it didn't take until your 2nd year when you got cut by the Warriors, you got cut then later, a few weeks later, by Houston, and finally picked up by the Knicks, and you were literally at the end of, I call it the evaluation period, where they're gonna make a decision whether to cut you, and all of a sudden it happened, right? Talk about how you were able to stay focused through all that time, getting all these awards, delivering for your team all the time, and yet never being appreciated. Can you talk about that?
It was tough. Like, it was cool in the beginning. It was not, well, it was cool meaning like it was okay in the beginning, but as each instance came, like the weight of dealing with that again became harder and harder. It was almost like kind of like an exponential curve, like in the beginning, you're kind of like, oh, like California Player of the Year, no scholarships. That's weird. Then you kind of, oh, like I did this and that and won this award and oh no, and then like it kind of your tolerance for it becomes increasingly more. Well, you just get a lot less tolerance for it. But I always kind of held on to my high school coach. Um, he gave me one simple phrase: "The cream always rises to the top." And it started early on. I went to San Francisco Pro Am. This is when I was in college, and obviously I show up. I'm a scrawny little Asian kid. The coach, the whole season, barely lets me play. I'm looking at the Pro Am like, I can help. Our team is not great. And I go for 2 games. I barely play. I tell my high school, and my high school coach came with me to those games, and he's driving like an hour and a half through traffic and then back. And so he's like, I told him after 2 games, I was like, I'm not getting any time. My coach doesn't even want to give me a chance. I'm done. And he made me stay. He was like, I'm not letting you quit. He was like, you never know. Just wait. So we go through the whole season, which is in the summer, the whole season until the very last game. The very last game, we're very far out of the playoffs for the Pro-Am, and there's not even enough guys that show up. We had like 6 guys that show up. Coach throws me in, and I have like a great, huge breakout game, whatever. And then the next season when I came back, that team was basically my team. But the point of what he was saying was, again, the cream always rises to the top, and you may not get that first chance or the second chance or the 5th chance or the 10th chance, but the cream will rise to the top. And so that was something that I kept with me through a lot of different situations. And even right before Linsanity, I talk about these like breaking moments. Right before Linsanity, I was with the Rockets. Right before New York, I was with the Rockets. I had just been cut from the Warriors, picked up by the Rockets. They had 5 point guards. Each team is only allowed 3. So I'm doing the math. 3 of them are guaranteed roster spots. So the other 2, me and the other guy, we're going to get cut. And not only am I not, I'm the 4th, I'm not the 4th, I'm the 5th string. So when I say I literally like could barely get into even practice to prove myself, I couldn't even get reps in practice to prove myself. I packed up my locker. I put everything in a trash bag, all my shoes and my practice jersey, whatever. I left that nobody knew. I left in the morning right after our morning practice. I go back to the hotel. My parents are there. And I call my agent. I say, hey, I'm done. Tell the Rockets to cut me. This is a waste of my time. And then my agent and my mom and dad who were there with me, they refused to. They're like, you're going back to practice tonight. I argue with them for a bit. They're like, you're going back to practice tonight. Like, this is not acceptable. It's not professional. And I was like, it's not going to happen. So I go back to practice again. A little bit later, I get a few opportunities. I show what I can do. And then the deadline comes around where you have to make your final roster cuts. And the Rockets actually say to me, like, you impressed us and we want to keep you, but we have 3 guaranteed point guards. Give us a little bit to try to trade one away. 48 hours later, they can't trade anybody away. So they cut me on Christmas Day. And so like Christmas at noon, I get the call. And so, I spent my Christmas going through booking a flight, going home, and I land at Christmas night back in the Bay. Again, the cream always rises to the top. That concept of like, then the Knicks picked me up, and 2-3 months later was Linsanity. And if I had actually called it quits, or if they had actually cut me, not because I was doing well, but because I left, that would have been way different for my stock and my value. But because I stayed, I played one more preseason game. I had a good game, and then they were making calls. like we want to keep, they're trying to trade somebody, so they're trying to keep somebody. Like you just never know how these things work out. But again, that was a breaking point for me where I actually was ready to. I actually packed my bags and I quit. It's just the people around me didn't let me. And that was just another example of the cream always rises to the top. You just never know. But if you stay in it long enough, it's a matter of, it can happen overnight as it happened to me and as it probably has happened to other people in this room.
Well, thank God the cream did rise. For over 14 years, the Jeremy Lin Foundation has been on a mission to redefine the way we love our communities by serving overlooked and marginalized AAPI and cross-racial youth. Partnering with over 30 nonprofits, the foundation supports access to opportunities, youth development, and mental health services, all to empower and equip the next generation to thrive, impacting over 40,000 underserved youth each year. Your support provides critical resources and flexible funding, giving underestimated AAPI youth hope and a brighter future. Together, we can build a future where all youth thrive. Please visit jeremylinfoundation.org to learn more and make a difference today.
I don't think we talk enough about the shift that needs to happen if or when you do make it to the top. I spent my whole life just trying to prove myself, and nobody really expected anything of me because I was Asian playing basketball. But nobody and nothing could have prepared me for when people did start to expect something from me. You don't understand the weight of what it's like to be the first. You don't understand the cost and the trauma that you experience as a trailblazer because you're in it and you don't have time to think about it. You don't have time to process it. And no one else has ever been through it. So nobody can really speak into it or understand it.
So Linsanity, it happened. It was amazing. I lived through it with my wife, and I remember jumping up like 5 feet high when you hit the game winner, all that. Let's talk about this idea of all the, I think, wonderful moments of becoming Linsanity or the whole thing. But then let's talk about some of the cost of that fame too. But let's start with some of the good moments. What were some of your favorite moments, and what was it like to be on that high?
One of my favorite moments was not having to sleep on a couch anymore. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I was on a couch for 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, we have like 10 really nice New York buildings who are all offering for you to stay in the penthouse for free. I was like, what? I was like, really? And I was like, oh, wow. Like, what, these are all nice things, right? These types of things are very nice. But again, like, they are fleeting, right? They are fleeting. And so, that's, but, I would say just seeing my hard work come to fruition and being able to play ball, like all the other stuff and the free meals and the free this and the free that, or the fame and all that is nice, but really it was the work. It was the craft. It was the art that I was able to enjoy, and put forth. And that was honestly to me, the best thing. And then just being able to take care of my family and just knowing like we made it and having that weight off my shoulders, was really, really nice too.
Wow, that's very powerful. What you're talking about, your highs are all so value driven. It's amazing. You know, taking care of your family. I I also think, though, we were talking about some of the trappings of fame, and I know you spent a lot of time with, is it Roger Montgomery, right? He's basically like kind of your agent, coach, counselor, psychologist, you name it, right? And I was listening to that interview you did with him, and it was so telling. And one of the things you talked about was when Linsanity happened, and probably because being the middle child, you do want to prove yourself, and you also want to please people that you love. All of a sudden, you took the weight of the world on your shoulders in terms of who you wanted to live up to in terms of expectation, including fans, including teammates, but also including the whole AAPI community. Can you talk about the cost of that and talk about the idea of anxiety.
So many people relate to the underdog overlooked story. You don't look the part, you don't feel like you belong, and you grind to get to the mountaintop. But I don't think we talk enough about the shift that needs to happen if or when you do make it to the top. I spent my whole life just trying to improve myself, and nobody really expected anything of me because I was Asian playing basketball. But nobody and nothing could have prepared me for when people did start to expect something from me. And that was a whole different beast and a whole different level of like mental just strength and confidence and like unrelenting ability, like, unapologetic, unrelenting, just belief in yourself. It's a different level when there's that type of target on your back. To me, it was just so hard at the age of 23, knowing that there's nothing I could do for the rest of my career that would ever top that. Like, that is a huge weight to carry, knowing that for the rest of my career, for the rest of my life, I will never be able to outrun the shadow of what happened when I was 23. And I don't think people really understand, like, I could talk about it, but like, you gotta kind of live through it to really understand just how demoralizing or how difficult that can be. And so I had to really wrestle with that. And through that process of figuring out, like, okay, once you make it and people expect something of you, what is the shift that needs to happen so that you can continue to do that? How do you stay free? You've been an underdog for 23 years of your life. Now everyone expecting an unrealistic thing from you, and everyone is putting their hopes and dreams on you and living vicariously through you and expecting the world of you. What needs to happen. And that was a multi-year evolution, and it was brutal. It was brutal. And I had to get a lot of professional help, which I was normally very against. Again, chip on my shoulder. Patricia, the CEO of Jalen, right there in the back by the fridge, she had given me a lot of, she was like, hey, you don't, the one thing she always said to me that I often discounted when I was younger was, you don't understand the weight of what it's like to be the first. You don't understand the cost and the trauma that you experience as a trailblazer because you're in it and you don't have time to think about it. You don't have time to process it. And no one else has ever been through it. So nobody can really speak into it or understand it. And so she was always like, hey, you need a sports psychologist or you may look into therapy. And my immediate reaction was, I've made it this far without anybody believing in me other than my closest, like, direct family. Like, why would I need somebody else to come in and just help me? And I had to be humbled. I had to be broken. And, now I'm like super pro, whether it's therapist, sports psychologist, any professional, it's like, hey, you want to get it? Like, I'm in great shape and I still need a professional trainer to help me in the weight room so I can even get stronger or move better. I am a world-class basketball player, but I will still work with trainers to get better. And I would say I'm also elite with my mental strength, but somebody could take me to maybe 4 or 5 steps beyond what I realized. And that's what has happened is these people, these professionals have done that. So if I can work on my body, if I can work on my skill, why not work on my mind? And so to me, literally now when I play, I look around and maybe this is very arrogant to say out loud, but this is a belief and this is how I carry myself. I look around at the other 9 players on the floor and I just say, there's nobody in here who's remotely close to as mentally strong as me. That's a belief that I have. That's something that I embody because I do struggle with anxiety. I have really struggled with confidence in many moments of my career. That is actually a weak point. One of the weak points of mine is that I quickly doubt or quickly question myself and my abilities, and being able to work on that. And now, coming to a place where I look around and I truly believe, like, I struggle with anxiety and yet I know how to work through that. And I know how to perform better than the person who is irrationally confident in themselves and doesn't have any anxiety. Like, I truly believe I'm more dangerous on the floor because I can miss my first 15 shots and still shoot that 16th one. And so that's just I mean, there's so much in that question, and I could talk a whole podcast on just that in and of itself. But I'm just trying to like figure out how do I give a huge answer in a short amount of time.
That's good. Couple things I took away from that. I didn't realize the way you said it, but it's true. You basically had to be better than Kobe and hit every single game winner for the rest of your life. That's pretty freaking high standard. I also saw an analogy of being the model minority where we've been hugely successful and then our expectations are then reset to be even more successful. And that's a lot of pressure. And I know you've talked about this, but it also feeds this idea of our imposter syndrome. And so that's really difficult. The part I think so important is this idea that as Asians, we don't necessarily think about our mental strength or mental health and wellness. And you've taken that on to be actually one of your key sort of attributes or traits that you bring to anything. And you work at it. It's like a muscle. You don't, take it for granted. And so I think one of the key takeaways for all of us is we should be like, instead of just getting tutors or going to Kumon or whatever with we should be helping our kids through some of the toughest years of their lives when they are dealing with more mental issues than just academic issues. Is that fair? I'm just
100%. Mental health is more important than Kumon. I co-sign.
quote of the podcast. We're not gonna let Kumon get a hold of
Nah, Kumon's great. Kumon's great. You should do both. Take care of your mental health and go to Kumon. All love and respect to Kumon.
Guess what? They're gonna trend up and they're gonna get more okay, business. Don't worry about it. Okay. Anyway, so the other thing you talked about is look, you had this great success, and then you got all these injuries, and then you were shuffled between teams, and every time it seemed like you're about to make a breakthrough, the body then wasn't quite there, or maybe quite frankly, you had a bad night because mentally you were in your head too much. And at some point, I mean, talk about it's sort of this interesting, I think, juxtaposition of both imposter syndrome, but also realizing that you still had so much to contribute was the moment you actually won the NBA championship. And right after that, sort of facing what was your career sort of path. Can you talk about that moment being both really high for winning a championship, but also feeling really kind of lost, I think?
I mean, again, this is just a small pitch into therapy, but my therapist has helped me reframe so many things. And even just reframing an experience can unlock everything. So, for example, the NBA championship, like for so long, for me, it was like, there's all those memes. It's like when you when you don't do anything on a group project but still get an A. And then it was like me with a trophy, right? Like and like there's a lot of those types of memes, and it doesn't only happen to me, but like every year, hey, you're laughing a little too hard in front of you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Hey, trust me. My bad. It was a totally comedic call out. I don't care at all. No, I really don't.
He's the one that made the post.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't. But it happens every year whenever anybody wins a championship, and then the guy who like doesn't. There are 3, 4, 5 guys who don't play at all, and they kind of make that meme. So that was me. And then over time, I had learned to reframe it, and now I actually like I brag about it. I used to never talk about it, like, and I right after I told my family, I was like, I'm gonna win one, but I'm gonna win one the right way. Those are my exact words. I'm gonna win another one, but I'm gonna do it the right way. Meaning I'm gonna play, I'm gonna contribute. And that was the level of like fire I had in me because I was just coming back from 2 years of injury. And I was like, this one doesn't count. And just reframing and realizing like, man, I grinded, I busted my ass my whole life. I am a world-class athlete. I deserve to be on that team. I worked so hard to be on that team. And millions and billions of people would love to be there if they could, but they can't. And I totally deserve that championship. And that championship is monumental, not just for me, but for anybody who can relate to the story. And I've really have learned to embody that. And it's the same thing with Linsanity. I ran from insanity for so long. I was just like, dude, like, I couldn't talk about it. I didn't let anybody near me, anybody close to me. You couldn't talk about Linsanity. You couldn't say any Lin pun. Like back then, everyone was just like trying to be funny. What's up, Super Nintendo? Or all that, you're Lin. Like just everything like Lin puns. And I was just like, all right, like we're taking all that out, none of that. Like, and I ran from that and just reframing it again. And so, for me, just really embodying it has just totally changed everything for me. I'm not even gonna lie, I forgot the original question. I don't even know what I'm answering now, but that was the point that I was trying to make.
We're talking about your rock bottom moment, how you came over through it. And I think this idea of reframing is really important. And you can talk about this with pregame anxiety to reframe the idea that having butterflies means that you're passionate, that you're actually in a situation where you're going to get challenged and tested and energized and, be able to do something exciting. And so this idea of reframing that is such a helpful tool. And I think, again, probably through counseling, through some, great counselors and advisors, you were able to, I think, create a new mental framework. And I think that's really important for us to think and put in our toolbox too. When you hit rock bottom, you talked a lot about one of the things that got you through rock bottom was the idea of making sure what you were doing was being driven by purpose. And a lot of that purpose came through your faith. Can you talk about that real quickly? And then I'm going to invite actually Stephanie Shu up, who is the president of the Jeremy Lin Foundation. In fact, Stephanie, you can come join us right now while Jeremy answers this question about faith and service and purpose as part of sort of how you went through some of the hard times.
Faith and family brought me through like my hardest moments, and for me, the way I always describe it is Linsanity, in the midst of Linsanity, when I had above and beyond everything that I could have dreamed of from a career standpoint, financial standpoint, wealth, fame, all of that, success, earthly, materialistic success, it wasn't enough. And I remember a very, like, very vividly, like, this is not enough. And I thought to myself, if this is not enough, then what is? And it was like a scary, scary moment. And I think, there's a lot of people in this room where, if you're in this room and if you're living in the Bay, like you're probably very blessed. You're probably in, the 1%. And, I think a lot of people who have a lot also understand like it's not enough. Like it's just because you have seven figures or eight, or just because you graduate from here or you accomplish this doesn't mean you're done and it's cool. And in fact, sometimes it drives you to want more and want more, want more. And that can almost be a monster in and of itself. And so the whole point of me saying that is I had to figure out who I was and not, not what I was doing. I let what I was doing or what my job was become my identity. Now I was working through that, and then juxtaposed with when I was at my lowest moments, these rock bottom moments, and I felt like I lost everything, but I had that identity, and for me, faith. I had my identity as a son of God, and that unconditional love drives me in a good way, because now I don't operate from a sense of and a feeling of scarcity. I don't go into my day being like, I need to do this or prove this to be good enough. I operate from a sense of abundance, like I am so loved and I just want to do these things. I get to do these things, and I'm able to play from a better sense of abundance and live my life from a sense of abundance where I know that like whether they hate me or love me today, whether we win or lose today, doesn't change who I am as a person. And that is so much more fundamental than anything we could accomplish. And so that's what carried me through the rock bottom moments, was really figuring that out. And it didn't take, like, the only reason why that was exposed was because I was actually able to make it to my mountaintop. And realizing that, like, and that's a big message that I try to tell everybody is like, man, if you are one day blessed enough to make it to your mountaintop, just know that if you aren't content today, you won't be content when you get there. Like that's a real thing.
I was thinking about what you're saying and how earlier you talked about you were really sensitive when people talked about Linsanity, right? And now that you have this sense of purpose driven by your faith, you actually have talked about, and Stephanie's talked about this too, that Linsanity is a gift based on your purpose. And so let's talk about this idea of the purpose of the Jeremy Lin Foundation. And I want to introduce Stephanie to you. Stephanie is incredibly accomplished. She was a former Bain consultant. We were both Bain consultants. Okay. Also, impact investing, iBanking. So incredible background, Wharton MBA. So, and you decided you wanted to focus your energies on helping Jeremy with the goal of helping underserved youth and really giving them better opportunities, breaking down barriers, instilling hope in them. What allowed you to make that transition into this, and what sort of drove you to do this?
Yeah, what drove me to the Jeremy Lin Foundation was really the board's vision that our future hinges on how we treat the most overlooked and underestimated youth in our society. And they wanted to approach it very counterculturally. Stay at the margins, stay proximate, listen to the underserved AAPI community to see what are the issues, what are the barriers, and to go really deep. And so I was kind of refreshed by this coming from, larger platforms, but I was really wanting to incorporate purpose, and also kind of trying to understand my own personal story through my work intergenerationally. And I had to undo a lot of my wiring. You know, I had to undo my sense of come in for scale, impact. I have answer for solutions, right? But it was really learning about how folks in the community who are living in community, who are doing the good work day in, day out, who are gonna be there for the long haul, have the long-term solutions, and we're just there, we exist to help the helpers, and I really appreciate, the board's commitment to that, and I think, personally, I've known firsthand just how transformational some of these programs are because 'cause I've participated in them growing up, and it can change an arc of a person to feel a youth to really feel loved and poured into, and that is why we exist.
That we've talked a lot, and Jeremy talked about this idea of reframing and redefining, I think, what we consider what love is and what success is. And I think the Jeremy Foundation is all about sort of redefining that and putting that into action. Can you talk about some of the programs you guys are doing and how you are doing that redefinition?
Yeah, this vision of redefining love, it's doing it differently. But we also have to be really focused in it, right? So we support marginalized API youth, and we do that by focusing on the highest low income API youth areas, which is Bay Area and New York City. 1 in 4 API youth right here are struggling with poverty, and that's something we obscure and invisibilize in some harmful myths. And what we do is we really go deep and we do that by tackling some really hard issues because what these youth face are not just barriers to poverty, barriers to racism, but it's also access to culturally competent mental health. And those are just compounding needs. And for example, like just to give you a glimpse of what these youth confront is tomorrow we're going to Little Saigon in Oakland. And these youth are trying to fight youth trafficking in their own neighborhood. And they're trying to do that by these leaders and these community nonprofits are coming together to really focus on creating employment alternative employment opportunities, youth centers with thriving programs, and access to culturally competent care. So that's some of the things that these youth are up against. And the second thing we do is we do this in community. We listen deeply to community leaders to surface those like underdog, overlooked, hidden gem organizations that are small but are serving as hands and feet. And we think our job is to not just come around and provide multi-year funding, but we really try and walk alongside our partners, whether it's walking them through a reorganization, some really hard trade-offs, praying for their youth, praying for their family members who are sick, or like talking frankly about staving off burnout, which is really chronic in this area. And The last thing we do is really we do this in partnership. We don't do this alone. We do this with others. And there's been so much joy in giving collaboratively. So we've led and launched donor collaboratives. We just wrapped a 3-year Stronger Together collaborative with an anonymous donor and TAF. And we're about to launch a 5-year donor collaborative to support 20 AAPI youth nonprofits. And so, we do this work by going deeply in partnership and in community.
Yeah, and if you guys get a chance, do 2 things. Listen to Jeremy's podcast, he's an incredible host. Number 2, go and watch some of the videos, from the foundation. You can see how hands-on both Jeremy and Stephanie get. They go and visit, the communities in need. They visit the recipients. They visit the people who are administrating or doing the good work and break bread with them and understand what their needs are so that then you guys can actually be highly leveraged in terms of both funding, but also other ways you're partnering with them. I think that's incredibly important. Last time, we really want to ask about the foundation, and maybe it's to both of you. Why is what you guys are doing so needed now in this time and what we're facing?
In this climate, it's really hard. It's probably the most challenging season for immigrant youth right now. And, we hear about youth who are scared to go to school, scared to go to these youth programs, scared to go to church, scared to for their parents who are scared to show up for their jobs as street sweepers, as restaurant workers. And they're trying to help their parents through overcoming language barriers in this climate. And so it's a challenging environment. It's a perfect storm of funding cuts, as well as escalating need. But what makes us really hopeful in these times is how these leaders continue to support and trust and serve. And we just heard this amazing story from one of the nonprofits who put on summer camp, even though they didn't have the funds to, and was oversubscribed. And they just said, we're going to move in trust. And they said that the community provided camp lunches, vans for transport, folks volunteer to be camp counselors. And that gives us so much, they felt so much hope because they were not alone and people were responding. And I think that gives us a lot of hope is that our futures are bound up together and it's going to be bright. And every act matters. So these nonprofits are right here in our backyard. There's a lot of ways to get involved, and they're doing really good work. And it's pretty transformational.
I just want to share from my perspective, um, like I have a heart for the foundation, but even now, with the pulls of life and career, like I struggle to find that balance too of am I am I really living up to who I said I wanted to be? And even like, maybe like 3 weeks ago, me and Patricia were meeting and she was just gave me a challenge like, hey, are you adding up? Like, are you authentic to and staying true to kind of the path and the vision and the heart of what you want certain things to do? And so I know a lot of us in here in this room probably have a lot of things pulling at us, a lot of responsibilities. And even for me, just finishing a season overseas and the burnout of grinding and competing at a high level like that, like, have I really been the most present and available for my foundation? Like the answer honestly is no. And that's been something that I've been addressing within myself of like, hey, like you should step up in this area, and not add on to your plate, meaning go, I'm already at capacity, so something has to go to add something in, but this has to be added in, so I got to figure out what's going to go. And so these are kind of the conversations that I'm trying to figure out too within myself, because I have a young child now and different things that have happened in my life where I'm just like, okay. And so that's not me talking like I have it all figured out and I'm this great role model, but really just like, hey, I am genuinely trying to figure it out too. I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to dream. God has given me so many blessings. And I might be able to do like, what would that look like? And because it's not impossible, like I could actually maybe make more impact with the resources and the finances that God has given me than with what I've been able to do on the court. That is a very daring dream, but that is something that like, hey, maybe I could actually do so much with what I've been given. And do I care enough? Right? Because it's easy to write I am blessed to be in a position where it's easier to write a check than it is to give a whole day of my time to go do something. But am I willing to go do that? Because I say I care about this. And so am I really willing to go do that? And these are questions that and reflections and things that I have to look in the mirror every day and really figure out. And so, I don't even want to answer that question. I just don't feel like it's authentic for me to even try to answer that question. It's like, hey, look, I was gone for 10 months. I was very not aware of things happening. And I'm committed that when I go back, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be like unaware of what's happening. I don't want to be, I don't want to leave it in the hands of other people. I want to be involved. I want to be present. And I think us as people, that's just everybody's evolution of juggling all the things that life will throw at us.
I wish we had another hour or two because we could talk about so many things. Jeremy, just my perspective and being able to celebrate everything, Jeremy, for the last 5 or 6 days, I felt like Linsanity and the stuff that came before that and the stuff that's happened now is honestly just the springboard for what's next. And there's so much available. And part of the reason you're probably feeling this pull is you could be a pastor, a motivational speaker. Whoever thought when you were growing up as a kid that you had a calling to be an incredible storyteller because you're so relatable and it's so, honest and raw in some way. And obviously, you've been on different forums and met so many cool people, and you can pull from those experiences to bring that together and make it both interesting, appealing, and entertaining, and yet something we can learn from. Let's give a big round of applause, not yet, for something else also that I just wanted to celebrate. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you've been a repeat champion for the Taiwan Professional Basketball League. And not only was he a champion with his younger brother, Joe, he was the MVP of the league and the MVP of the finals that were hard fought in 7 games. And so, congratulations. Let's give it up to Jeremy. We definitely feel heard from you in terms of representing the community. I think there's just a strong sense of gratefulness for you being the first and for being out there and for being strong enough to both weather being the underdog and overcoming that, but then also weather some of the, I think, trials and tribulations that happened afterwards. And then what you've built from it, this gift that we've talked about and that you guys are doing with this. Can we just one more time thank Stephanie and Jeremy for being here today? Thank you guys. And to our listeners on the podcast, thank you for tuning in. And please visit jeremylinfoundation.org and get involved. Contribute, volunteer, introduce people, etc. Please get involved. Listen to all episodes of Aconic on aconicpodcast.com. You can also catch new episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.